Hello and welcome to the Senate Committee on Agriculture meeting for Friday, March 15th, 2024. And today we're going to take up some further testimony on H 603, an act relating to the poultry slaughter exception to inspection. We've taken quite a bit earlier, and I think basically we're going to hear today from some more farmers who are on the ground and very interested in this legislation. So I'll let the committee know as well. Next week, just so people know, we will be taking at least a couple days to further consider H 81. That's the Right to Repair Act. And we will have an appearance by a former vice chair of this committee, Chris Pearson, who will be joining us on Tuesday morning.
Or Thursday.
Or Thursday. But it'll be good to see him again. And we're going to take both Tuesday and it looks like Thursday, or maybe Tuesday and Wednesday for that. And then we'll deal with this bill again, H 603, later in the week. And that's pretty much it. There will be obviously some House bills coming over across that we'll have to begin work on. And I think our work for at least the first half will be concluded today. We don't have anything up for a vote today, so we'll just be looking at House bills coming across. So if you folks are ready, we'll go into our testimony today. Taylor Blackmer is our first witness. He is a farmer and runs the Lucky Fields Farm. I'm sorry.
Hello.
Taylor,
That's okay. I get it all the time. It's okay.
Yeah, it could be either way, right? So.
Yep.
Welcome and thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I am Taylor. I'm a co-farmer with my husband of Lucky Fields in Chester. We are going into our third season, and our first season we raised about 750 birds, and last season we doubled that. And our just growing, our customers want us to grow a lot faster, and we can't do it because there's only two of us. So we're very excited for the potential for our farm. We've worked on a lot of other farms over the last few decades, and one thing that we realized was that people want chicken parts. And so most of our business right off the bat has been parts. About 70 to 75% of our birds go into chicken parts. And we do that by driving to a USDA processing facility. The processing facility we use is in Rhode Island. We're lucky enough to have family down there. And so the drive is a little bit easier when I can bring the grandkid and drop her off at grandma's house for the day while I do all of the busy work at the processing facility. So that's a little bit of the background of what we do. And I guess talking about this bill and how it would change our business, it would be incredible to be able to process our birds into parts on farm. We've run a few numbers on what that would look like financially for us, and it looks like we would save or retain in the business about 50% of our current processing costs. So this year, that's about $5,000 for the year, which, if you know anything about farm finances, that is like a make it or break it kind of number. That would be huge for our little farm. It also means that all that money stays in the state. Our processor is in New England, but keeping money as close to home as possible, I think, is really important to us. And keeping our birds close to home is really important to us too. We think it's really important to try to reduce our food miles as much as possible. And our customers want that too. A lot of our customers are, I don't want to say upset, but definitely concerned with us having to drive so far to process our birds. They want us to process on farm. Sorry, I have a 2-year-old talking to me in the background. I keep losing my train of thought, but Yeah, so lowering our food miles would be great. Things like being able to meet our customer desire by processing parts on farm would be really huge for our business. We have a lot of customers who want smaller package sizes or different ways of cutting things that just can't really be done with a USDA processor, or at least not the one that we use. They're too busy to customize each individual order. Um, and so being able to offer those things to our customers uh would be great. I think we would sell more, we'd have happier customers, customers getting the things that they want. Things like smaller breast packages. We sell mostly at the Norwich Farmers Market, and we have a lot of older customers, a lot of single people, a lot of grad students who live alone. They don't want, you know, a 1.5 pound breast. They don't want two breasts in one package. They want a single breast. They want split wings. They want a half bird. They want spatchcock birds, those types of things that are not currently allowed. And getting our processor to do those things either costs more money than it's worth, or they just simply can't fit it into their schedule to do those things. Um, a few other things that we think would happen if we were able to process on farm is lower stress for our birds. They're not traveling 2.5 hours on the day of processing. We try to keep it as, you know, low stress as possible. We catch our birds late at night with red headlamps on to not wake them, to not stress them out. We're gentle with them, picking them up one by one, placing them in the crates, moving them into a trailer where we have fans on them if it's hot. We, you know, drive early in the morning when it's still dark to get to the processor as early as possible, which usually means leaving myself and my 2-year-old at about 2 o'clock in the morning after just a few hours of sleep to drive down to Rhode Island and get there by, you know, 6 a.m. for processing, which is a long day to say the least. Yeah, things that, you know, if we could reduce the stress, we'd have better plucking, more tender meat. The stress on the birds with heat, we'd be able to schedule bird processing according to the weather, according to when the birds are ready, you know, those types of things. So, for example, last year, or I guess it was the first summer, we had one day where, you know, the high temperature for the day was 100 degrees down in Rhode Island, 103 actually. And I was shipping birds that day. So it's a matter of getting there as quickly as possible, as early as possible before the sun comes up, keeping fans on them, bringing extension cords and and keeping them as cool as possible. Those birds definitely had a few more struggles in the processing, the plucking and the processing of them because of that type of stress. And if we didn't already have a day scheduled at the USDA processor, we would have just done it a different day at home and had that flexibility in our schedule. And on that, like quality of life for ourselves as well. Um, this is Rosie. She wants to climb climb up on your
Just gonna ask who
anxiety,
that
but
was. Hi,
yeah,
Rosie.
she's the head farmer here. Uh, yeah, on that, like we don't want to be driving down at 2 o'clock in the morning to get to the processor as early as possible, having to wake her up and those types of things. Hold on, baby. Um, so our quality of life would be better. We would have less stress. We would have less, you know, less of those late nights, early mornings. And as our business grows, you know, those late nights and early mornings are becoming more and more daunting. The first year it was like, oh, it's just a couple. It's not a big deal. The second year it's like, it's a few more. It's getting to be more a big deal, more of a big deal. And as we grow, I think those will become less and less exciting for us, you know, those early mornings and late nights. So our quality life will be, I think, better. Not only will we have, you know, better schedule, more work that we want to be doing, but we'll be keeping more money in our own pockets. We'll be paying our own labor to process our birds rather than paying somebody else's labor out of state. So, um, yeah, those are all the important things. And I don't know if you guys have any questions for me, but I think that's all I have to ramble on about.
Anybody with a
No,
question?
I don't think so. That's helpful testimony.
So I have a couple, Taylor. You
Sure.
mentioned that you started off with 750 birds. We're assuming that chickens and not turkeys, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. They're all broiler chickens. Yeah.
Okay. And so you've doubled that, and if I could do that math quickly in my head, I think that comes up to about 1,500, right?
Yep.
I wasn't aware there was anybody, and I know very well where Chester is, so you go down 103 to 91 and then across eastern Massachusetts down into Rhode Island.
Uh,
So
yep.
that's about a 4 hour trip, isn't it, each way?
It's about 2.5 hours from our house, 2 hours and 45 minutes,
Okay.
each way.
Okay.
Uh, we we get a lot of questions of, I know Bruce is in the room there, but we get a lot of questions. Why don't you go to Bruce's place? Why don't you go to Maple Winds? Well, it's about the same distance from our house, and my mom doesn't live next door. So um so if the question was why we drive there, that's why.
Not so much that, just I'm admiring the fact that you figured out a way to get it all done. You got to put Rosie in the car. You got to plan this ahead of time. You got to get your trailer all set up. And how many birds do you take normally on an average trip down there and back?
Uh, First of all, thank you for recognizing that. It's a lot, and it's really appreciated to have that recognized. We do batches of 300 birds. So we're going down, well, this year we're changing it up a little bit, but we're going down about 5 times a year, 300 birds a piece, and then we do our whole birds on farm here, and that's a whole other thing because we have to keep them separate from the USDA birds. So there's a whole lot of like half filled freezers all the time. And that's just an expense, to keep them all separate, to have that all be legal and everything, half full freezers, extra coolers to bring to market, those sorts of things. But yeah, so we're going down 4 or 5 times a year with 300 birds a piece.
Well, that's quite a project for you and your husband. I think you're an excellent face for folks to see, as our small farmers are putting together different plans for each of their enterprises. So if this bill were to come through our chamber and be successful and governor signs it and all, the labor costs, would you hire someone then to do your processing on site, or are you two able to do it yourselves?
The plan would be for us to do it mostly ourselves. We probably in the first year would be able to do it mostly ourselves, and grow from there, hiring somebody part-time to help with that processing. We have, my husband and I both worked at a farm down in Rhode Island who processes quite a few birds. I think at the time we were doing about 12 to 14,000 birds a year. A lot of birds. Turkeys, ducks, chickens, and um we think with two people we'd be able to do most of those birds with our experience, and do them well on farm. In the future, I think having somebody hired to help us would be definitely good. Definitely take a little bit off our plate. Yeah.
Okay. So we've been joined by our fourth member. The chair of the committee is not able to be with us today. And I kind of waited to introduce ourselves till the four of us were here. So we'll just kind of go around the table and let you know who you're talking to, if that helps.
Great.
Irene?
Senator Irene Renner from Chittenden, which includes Fairfax.
Brian Campion, Bennington County District.
And Rich Westman, I'm from Moyle.
And I'm Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland District. So you're just a little bit south of where my district ends in, I guess it would be Mount Holly is pretty close to where we are there. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how the bill would impact you, and it sounds like it's all going to be pretty favorable. I mean, you'll pick up 2.5 hours each way a week, or however often you go down there. So that's a good thing.
Well, it's not just 2.5 hours each way. It's a matter of getting our trailer set up the day before. It's a matter of going out at, after dark. So depending on the time of year, that's anywhere, early in the season, it might be after 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And mid-season, August, it's oftentimes around 10 o'clock at night. We're headed out there, 9:30, 10 o'clock. So that's a full day of labor. And then it's a full day of labor driving down, getting the birds processed, because it's not like, oh, 2.5 hours and they're done. I have to wait until all of our birds are processed before I can leave the processing facility. So that's often, if I get there at 6 a.m., I'm not often leaving until about 11 or 12, like noonish. And then the birds, if I'm parting them out, which is what our whole trip down there is for, I can't pick the birds up until about 4:30, 5 o'clock the following day.
Uh,
So it's a full 2 days down there. And then I pick them up around 4 or 5 o'clock, drive 2.5, usually 2.5, 3 hours on the way back, because of the time I'm leaving through Worcester is quite a tough time to drive through Worcester with a stock trailer. And then it's about 3 hours of organizing our freezers with all of the new meat, making sure that everything is spread out enough that it will freeze solid within, 2 days or so, 3 days, making sure that it's all separate from the old meat, all the new meat is going in the bottom, and all of those things. So it's usually a full 3 days, 5 times a
Okay.
year.
And I
So that
I should mention Linda Lehman is our committee assistant. I didn't give her a chance to introduce herself, but Senator Renner, a question?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. What do you see, if any, potential to grow if this were to pass this session?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Do you see an increase in a particular, do you see yourself doubling again if a bill like this were to pass, or do you want to stay around 1,500 birds for a while?
We are currently on leased land, and the land that we're currently operating on wouldn't be able to hold more than maybe 2,000 birds. But the goal is by year 5 or 6 maybe, is to hit about 6,000 birds. And that would be a mix of wholesale accounts, and those birds would still have to be USDA processed. So there still would be some USDA processing in order to stay within the legal limits. But we think we could probably double again with just farmers market sales. And maybe even more than that if we did something other than just the Norwich Farmers Market. The amount of demand for chicken parts in this state is wild. We can't believe how many people are buying things like feet, like liver, like heart. We'd be able to use more of the bird if if all of this were passed and we could sell all those things. We sell out of hearts and livers almost before we even get the birds processed. So yeah, being able to sell all those things at more markets, we would at least be able to double our production and still not leave the state, not leave the farmers markets. Yeah.
Super. Thank you.
Yeah.
So are there other farmers markets closer than Norwich for you, or why did you pick Norwich?
Norwich, I believe, is still marked as the best market in the state. Like the most money coming through that market in the state. I'm not sure how it compares to Burlington, but last I heard, it brought more money through it than any other market in the state. We used to live in Norwich. The goal is to end back up in Norwich. We love that area. Our first farm was in Springfield, which is much closer to Norwich than where we are now. But that land lease didn't work out after, just one season. And so we were sort of forced to move further away just because of circumstance. But we had already started to build that really strong customer base in Norwich. So yes, there are other markets. There's the Woodstock market, which we're trying to figure out how we might be able to fit that into our very busy schedule. My husband and I both work off farm as well. So I'm a gardener part-time. And he drives for a local food distributor down in Brattleboro, Food Connects. So he goes all over the state and meets all sorts of incredible farmers and farm stand owners and co-op owners and that sort of thing, and gets to chat with them about all of these things and all things food. So yeah, we have to just figure out how to fit all those Woodstock market and all that into into an already tight schedule.
Well, they probably don't make it 100% easy because I have a feeling most of the markets are on the same day of the week. And that makes it hard to go from one to the other. I understand that, but I think you pointed out some really important things, Taylor. The amount of fuel that you're using right now to go down and back to Rhode Island, and the fact that the money spent down there to process, if this bill were to pass, would stay in Vermont rather than helping our neighbors down in Rhode Island, which do.
Which are great. Our processor's amazing. I don't want to say that, we don't like them. We love them. They're kind people. They care about us. One thing that I get every single time I go down there is, when are you guys going to open a USDA processing facility? Getting these birds out of ours would be great. We can't handle the numbers. Because of these rules, because of the rules in other states, they're so inundated with small farmers that they're overwhelmed with the number of small farmers having to come to a USDA processing facility. And they're the type of people who will do their best to not turn people away because they want to help everyone, even to their own detriment. And so, they accept as many people as they can, but they're still turning thousands of birds away each year, that they just can't handle, which means that those birds are going either to people like Maplewind or Commonwealth in Maine, which is even further away. We have friends who drive their birds down to New Jersey to get parts, which is from Walpole. I believe they're still going down to New Jersey for parts, which is just, I can't even imagine having to do that drive. So yeah, being able to do this all on farm would make an incredible difference in all these small farms and the processors and the birds and our customer base. Yeah.
Anybody have any more questions?
It's excellent. Thank you.
That's very good,
Yeah.
very helpful.
Taylor, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, and I guess Rosie's kind of disappeared there, which is okay too.
Yep, she's coloring in the other room now.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, and please stay in touch.
Great. Thank you all so much.
You're welcome.
Good to see you.
Next on the list is Margaret Loftus from the Cross Molina Farm. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And Margaret, are you there? There we are.
I am here. Good
Well,
morning,
welcome.
everybody, and thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. My name is Margaret Loftus, and my husband Jonathan and I own Cross Molina Farm, which is a small, highly diversified farm in Corinth, which is in Orange County. We raise vegetables, pastured laying hens, Highland cattle, lamb, pork, and broiler chickens. And when someone asked the turkey question, I realized that I had left that off the list. We also raise turkeys for Thanksgiving only. We sell our eggs and our pork products wholesale, but some of them, but the bulk of what we produce across the board is sold directly to customers. We sell at the Chelsea Farmers Market, which is not the biggest, but one of the oldest farmers markets in the state. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. We have a CSA, and we also have a year-round farm store, which is located in the center of Corinth, next to the post office and across from the town hall. We're members of Rural Vermont. We're members of NOFA, and I'm on the policy and organizing steering committee for NOFA. And we would be absolutely ecstatic if H603 passed. It would be, as we heard earlier, just as Taylor said, just an absolute game changer for our farm. We've been raising and processing our own broilers since 2007. And we currently do about 600 a season. A lot of them we sell to folks here in town who come to the farm on Chicken Day and pick them up, and they buy them to stock their freezers. One of the important things about this, growing chickens, processing them, and selling them directly to the customers is where it's an important part of how our farm connects people and our community to the land and to their food and to where it comes from. Our customers know our family, they trust our farming practices, and they count on us to provide reasonably priced local food. People love to roast a chicken, but people desperately want chicken parts, and they want locally raised chicken parts. Um, we always heard this from our the folks who came to pick up whole chickens on Chicken Day, but the need for parted chickens really increased when we opened our farm store in 2020. And those folks, the folks that come to buy chickens at the store, are really looking for parted birds and not whole chickens. So in 2022, we started to look into having some of our birds parted. And we were faced with what would be a 4-hour road trip to Rhode Island, and getting a hotel room because we don't know anybody down there, and waiting another day to pick them up, or crossing our fingers that Bruce at Maplewind would be able to take us that year. And as I remember, that we got the only opening they had that year. And we've been lucky enough to take birds to them for parting. We still do some on the farm, and then we take some to Bruce for parting. Bruce does a great job. We love working with Maplewind, but between their processing fees, which are very reasonable, the US cost of having the USDA person there, and the cost of our transportation, which is less than going to Rhode Island, but it's still a lot of labor, time, transportation. We estimate that it adds almost $10 a bird. And that cost we have to pass on directly to our customers. The cost of doing processing on our farm would be about half of that. And I think this is a really critical reason to support the bill, because it would help farms like ours keep local food and something that's accessible and not a luxury. And that will help create the vibrant economy, agricultural economy that the state wants to have. So between, the quality of life for the birds is another big, it is traumatic to say the least, to be stuffed in a crate and driven, and for us, it's about an hour. Again, Taylor covered a lot of that with, if it happens to be a hot day, the planning ahead. If we're doing it here on the farm, we have a lot more control. We have a crew who's able to handle that, some of whom trained with Bruce. I just can't stress enough how critical this bill is, taking a big step forward in alleviating the need for more local meat processing, the need for parted and for vibrant farms to be able to provide local food to our neighbors and our community. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Margaret. I appreciate that. So you said about 600 birds a season. How many of those do you sell as whole birds, and how many do you send over to Mr. Hennessy?
Last year we did more parted birds than whole birds, but on average it's about half and half.
And it's just you and your husband?
No, we have 2 full-time employees that are almost year-round, and another full-time employee that is year-round.
Okay. Because you're involved not just with chickens, but and by the way, her testimony's on our webpage. Highland cattle, lamb, pork, and so yeah, and also you sell eggs and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. And we also raise vegetables. So yeah, we're a whole diet farm.
Yep. Anyone with questions for Margaret?
That's great.
They're getting more and more convinced.
Yeah, well, we're talking with our small farmers today, and we've got excellent representation, I think. We did take testimony from some other folks earlier this week. Their concern, I think, was every time you cut, you risk the sanitary conditions that might exist to adulterate the bird, and I can understand that. I appreciate that sort of side of things, but I think you're all making pretty good cases for, finding a way to make this happen for you to park birds yourselves.
I could speak a little bit to that. Um, we have there's a poultry processing food safety class that I believe the year we took it out of the University of New Hampshire. It also taught you how to process rabbits in the same class. But there's a lot of really good information out there about how to maintain healthy conditions when you're processing poultry. And a farm that has been successfully processing whole birds certainly has a really good, and selling them to happy customers, certainly has a really good sense of how to keep things safe. And we've seen, since we've been doing it, you know, I think we've been processing chickens pretty much since the exemption began. There were similar concerns then. And I haven't heard of any issues with health and safety around on-farm chicken processing since it started here in Vermont. And we've even seen our insurance company turn around, and we are now insured for the chickens that we sell. When it first happened, they said, "Oh, we can't do that," and they're now doing that. So I think, you obviously have to be careful whenever you handle raw meat. But farmers know that. That's part of what we do. And if we're going to be trusted to sell it and store it safely and to process a whole bird, then I don't see any difference in trusting us to create a separate clean area to cut the birds.
Okay. I think we heard similar concerns, not sure if everybody was on the committee back then, when we allowed raw milk to be sold at farmers markets, et cetera. And I haven't heard anything negative in that regard since we did that. And that's gonna be a couple years ago anyway. So thank you for that information. I think that's crucial. Because if I'm remembering, that was sort of the main objection to allowing this to happen, this bill to go forward. So I appreciate that.
And I just want to say one more thing, that if you think about it, if we sold a whole chicken or a parted chicken or, any of the other food that we sell, and someone got sick, our business would be done for. And, we're a small family business. And, we're not, one of these big lettuce farms in California that can survive something like that. So we are very careful. And I would say that I can speak for, Vermont farmers in general, that, we have a huge incentive to be careful. And I think that helps us, make sure that we educate ourselves and how to do things safely, and that we have good systems and good protocols, and that we do things safely.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
I was just wondering, Bill, is there an intersection between the bill and the Department of Health in terms of inspections and things like that? I don't remember.
Maybe
my
bill here. I don't.
Someone testified from the agency today that the health department had asked to testify and said they had no problems.
Thank you. That helps. Thank you. Great reminder.
Thanks, Linda. I appreciate that. Any other questions for Margaret?
No. Thank you, Margaret.
Yes, we appreciate that information very much. Thank you for joining us. Carol Fairbank is up next from the Broad Fork Farm.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here to talk about my farm a little bit today and my experience with processing poultry. So I've heard this morning anyway from a couple of larger farms who are actually experiencing bringing chickens out to part. And I've actually not gotten to that point. I'm a much smaller farm. I operate Broad Fork Farmstead out of Greensboro, Vermont. We're in the Northeast Kingdom, in a historically very underserved part of the state. very high population of lower income senior citizens, so folks who are really impacted by food systems and the availability and accessibility of food. So when I started my farm, I actually started it with a little bit of a different intention. It wasn't the typical I'm going to just start a farm and hopefully become profitable. I very intentionally started my farm as a low profit limited liability corporation with the intention of having a mission to be able to work on small scale, local, sustainable agriculture in this region. And a big part of that is, building skills, supporting food independence, and really increasing the food equity across our region, which is in some ways excellent and in other ways is still really lacking. So I've been raising chickens and other poultry for market now for about 4 years. I raise a variety of, I do typical broiler chickens like everybody else. I also offer stewing hens, and then just the random ducks, geese, and turkeys. Some years I'll raise turkeys, other years I'll raise geese, mostly for holiday birds, and sometimes ducks as well. But we are a very small farm, so we do, really just a couple of hundred birds a year. And I've never gotten to the point of even considering taking our chickens out for parting because of the cost of, that added processing cost for the most part. So my farm revenue, really just to keep the farm operating and keep the mission going is very diverse. Poultry and birds are just a small part of that. We also sell eggs, produce, value-added agriculture, other meats, and bakery products as well. And the intention is really to serve the immediate community and those people around us, our neighbors. We want to feed our neighbors. So mostly we sell at local farmers markets. I do 4 different markets, 2 winter markets, and then 2 different summer markets. And then a small farm stand as well. And for all the reasons that the others have said, we want to be able to slaughter our birds on farm here just because we believe, with the minimal disruption, it's a lot more humane. There's less food miles involved with it, and we truly are feeding local birds to our local community. But again, when we look at our demographic, being lower income, individuals, smaller families, seniors, they can't all handle a whole bird. So they're looking for a smaller package of chicken, especially like they'll come up at the farmer's market and say, do you have chicken parts? And I'll say no. And of course, for the most part, they will turn down a whole chicken and not buy chicken at all versus having the whole bird. One way that I've worked to try to mitigate that, especially with with families, I've worked on teaching classes to part out chickens so that people can buy a whole chicken and bring it home and, get multiple meals out of it, how to really stretch that one bird. And a lot of people are willing to do that, but some are just not, especially seniors. If you've got an older person living alone, they really just don't want a whole chicken. So that's, essentially a lost, a lost opportunity for us. So we do also get a lot of requests for organ meats, for chicken feet, people who are making bone broths and other really nice, nutritious things want to have chicken feet. At this point, we're not able to offer that. But I think the biggest thing is that for the end product, our cost would almost double for being able to process those birds. And for the demographic that we're trying to serve, for the people in the Northeast Kingdom who really need to have affordable and accessible food, it really it throws it right out of whack. And they would not be able to afford that. And I do see we do have other processors that will come to the farmers markets. And for the most part, they'll come to Hardwick or they'll come to Greensboro a couple of times, and then they'll go and sell their meat in Montpelier instead, just because it's really just not affordable for folks in this area. So I think that's really the biggest thing, is making sure that we keep it accessible to the people that we are trying to serve here in this region. And I really would like to be able to offer this homegrown meat to our neighbors, and for them to know that it's grown right here and processed right here at home, in a safe and sanitary place where they can come and visit the farm. They can see it, see where we process our, where we grow our birds, where we process them. And I think that's really important, for supporting that sustainable kind of future of this. I'd be happy to take questions.
Me? I'll just ask, because I'm always curious about how far away is the nearest processing facility to you?
I'm going to say it's probably Bruce.
Okay,
That's where our other local folks do bring their birds when they want them parted out.
and Bruce is with us and he'll be testifying in just a minute or so. So, yes, Senator.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Ms. Fairbanks, so again, your farm, would you remind me, you created it so that you would be able to feed more low-income folks? Get
Mhm.
more, and how, generally, just tell us a little bit more about how that's going.
Well, my intent when I started the farm was not to, was really to put as much of the revenue that came from the farm back into the farm for the purpose of feeding folks. So I do work with, other local food sovereignty organizations like the Center for an Ag Economy, like Grow Your Own, which is kind of a smaller mission-driven offshoot of that helps to promote, food sovereignty through education. Neighbors in Action out of Cabot, Vermont works on some similar projects, and I've taught a lot of classes for them. But really, my intention when I started the farm was not ever for the farm to be super profitable. I did think about going in as a nonprofit, but for this time anyway, at least for the next year or two, I will be operating as an LC3, and really putting as much of the revenue from the farm back into the community as possible.
It's great. Thank you so much for your work and also, of course, for your testimony.
I'm trying to remember, Carol, did you say if this were to pass, that it would be like double income for you, kind of?
Well, it would mean that I would be right now, it is prohibitive. I'm not offering any parted chickens at all because I already have done the market research and I know that I would not be able to sell them at a price point that is affordable for my customer base. So what it would mean is I could probably double the number of chickens that I am raising and processing to make those parted out chickens available. So yes.
I knew you said double, I just didn't know what that meant exactly, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Anyone else with questions for Carol?
No, it's super, thank you.
Thanks, Carol, we appreciate your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Up next is Amber and maybe Jason, I'm hoping I'm saying this correctly, Hubner from the Sweet Pickens Farm. And they're both on the screen. So welcome, Amber and Jason, and thank you very much for joining the Senate Agriculture Committee.
Thank you for having us.
Could you maybe adjust your volume just a little bit?
Is that better?
Yes, yes.
It's really loud on my end. Hold on just a second. All right. So I'm Amber. This is my husband, Jason. We own and operate a USDA poultry processing facility down in Putney, Vermont.
We're still having a little audio. Is there any
It's fuzzy, I think,
on there?
speak a little closer to the microphone.
Yeah, if you could get maybe closer to the microphone.
That's true. All right, is that any better?
Yeah, kind of.
Heard USDA, but not ten.
Yeah. They're in Putney. Putney.
Thank you.
Okay, let me try again. I'll get a little closer. All right, is any better?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So as you've heard, I'm Amber. This is my husband, Jason. We own and operate a USDA poultry processing facility down in Putney, Vermont. I think we're probably one of the youngest USDA facilities in Vermont, and We've been doing it since 2020, I believe, is when we went state inspected and then became USDA the following year. My husband would know better.
Last year, we became.
We became USDA last year. We had been state inspected for about 2 years, and before that, we had processed under the exemption. We started processing birds in about 2016. We started the farm in 2013, tried to do produce and eggs, realized everybody does produce and we just weren't as good at it. So we decided to kind of switch gears and fill an egg niche in our area that was needed. And that grew to producing broilers. We don't do a large amount. Last year we did a little under 1,000. We will be doing 2,500 this year. And we do part out a majority of our birds, which has obviously increased our revenue, which has been helpful, but we've also done it, in very safe, clean, inspected conditions where if we have questions, we have a resource to turn around and ask, which part of our concern about this bill is not having that resource and support there for all of the smaller backyard farmers who might need more guidance, who are newer at it, or just don't have the experience. So we're not against the bill as it is. We feel like there needs to be some modifications to it before it's passed so that it's received better across all poultry farm industries.
Amber, would you mind just clarifying what modifications you think the bill needs? I
Yes.
think one of the things you may have said that.
So when we were under the exemption, we were required to put that verbiage, I don't have it exactly in front of me, like exempt per, and then the Vermont statute, and then not inspected in bold letters. There's no requirement currently on how big that lettering has to be. So the consumer isn't aware, unless they look closely or know that farmer well, that the meat they're buying is uninspected. And I feel very personally that every consumer has the right to know what they're buying. They need that transparency. And there's so much kind of not labeling fraud, but I don't know how to word it, where you can have something on there, but so small that you can say it's there, but the consumer wouldn't necessarily pick it up without really looking for it. I feel that the labels that are required on the poultry, the verbiage regarding the statute and the not inspected should be the same size as the farm name. That way there's no missing that it is uninspected per that statute, and the consumer is knowing that when they're purchasing it, it's not inspected. I also feel that there needs to be smaller limits on the exemptions for parts, because right now, when a lot of the farmers we've heard testify that it would allow them to grow a better pace. I mean, right now we don't even operate anywhere near 20,000 birds a year, or even 5,000. And for us to have to put the cost in to provide a service and a product that meets the state's requirements of sanitation and food safety handling, just to have somebody not have to put that cost or the work in, it kind of stinks, honestly. I mean, my husband's the one who actually works in the processing facility. I do a lot more of the background work, so he can give you more background as to what it's like actually in the facility, slaughtering and packaging, and what he's required to do versus what it was like when we were doing it in the backyard.
Okay. Jason, you want to jump in?
Sure. So can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
So we did fully take advantage of the 1,000 bird exemption for several years, and it was great. that we were allowed to even do that. However, you know, we came up to that 1,000 bird cap, and we needed to go further to make the enterprises more viable and sustainable. And when we got up to that cap, we realized there was a lot of things that made it very challenging to produce what we would consider a consistent or safe product. When you're chilling birds outside in tubs with ice, and the wind blows and the pine needles are ending up in your fill tank, and when days would go long and you're still packaging birds up when it gets dark, and flies are buzzing into your headlamp and then sometimes landing in the package, just the stress level was through the roof. And I guess what we'd like to see is, if the law passes, which it probably will, maybe a lower cap on this exemption. And for those farmers who see that it's a good area to grow in, we maybe like to see them come under inspection. Because as Amber said, all the things that we're required to do as a state or federal plant, none of these farmers are required to do. No testing of water, no HACCP plan. There's no oversight. Yeah.
Some of the slides presented regarding, you know, how operations are currently going in the backyard. You know, there was no beard nets, no hair nets, you know, birds were visibly, you know, bruised and damaged. I mean, there's no bacterial or human safety regarding, like, if like your beard hair or hair is falling into the packaging as you're putting the bird in, or there's just no accountability. Nobody knows who's doing this either. I think that this farm should register with the state and just say, hey, you know, I'll be doing, you know, approximately so many birds. So in case there is some sort of an outbreak of like Campylobacter or something, there is some traceability.
Okay, would you be willing to provide us with some written suggestions about what you just outlined for us, so that if we have time, we might be able to inject that into this particular version of the bill?
Certainly. I mean, we don't think it's bad. We
If this bill was being proposed when we were under exemption, it's huge.
We'd be
And it is huge for everyone who will use it. It's great. But at a certain point, I think producers need to come under inspection to make sure everybody's on the same, you know, level plane of quality and safe product for consumers, and the integrity of the industry as a whole.
You know, we talk about how passionate we are about Vermont poultry, you know, wanting to provide this product to the consumer. But if something were to happen and there is an outbreak, and there's inspected facilities, USDA facilities, and exempt places, you know, the whole industry is going to be compromised, not just where the outbreak occurred. And so minimizing the risk is more beneficial for the state. And the state offers really great incentives to help producers with building facilities. I mean, we were able to take advantage of the Working Lands Grant to help build our facility. And every step of the way, the Vermont Agency of Ag, Julie has been an invaluable resource in any information we've needed.
Yep.
And the inspectors we've had have been great. And if they don't know the answer right away, they get right on it and will follow up pretty much the same day. Or if we have concerns about something. Also with this exemption passing and not knowing who's bagging and tagging what birds, with label requirements as a state facility or federal, we're required to back up any label claims that we're putting on our labels, and there's no way to regulate that now. So the person down the road could produce 10 chickens and bag them as certified organic, have labels made up, slap them on the bird and sell them, even if it's not true, but because there's no traceability or accountability or oversight on it.
Okay.
So that's also a concern for us, because, you know, if you are producing like a pastured product, but your birds are in a barn all winter, you know, that's not fair to the people who actually do go out and produce pastured meat and are seasonal.
Well, that would be great. You obviously got Linda's address, our committee assistant. You could send her your thoughts on this and, great. We'll take it into, consideration for sure. But you both do support the bill.
We support it as a whole, but not in its current version.
Okay.
Well, I do, I can't speak for my husband.
Yeah, that's about right. We do understand that this would be huge for anyone operating under the exemption. I just want to caution, because we've operated under exemption and we are now under inspection, we have seen both sides of this. And as an example, when we thought we were doing a really good job as we began testing our birds and our numbers were coming back very high, we had reason for concern that maybe we weren't producing as safe a product as we thought we were.
And insurance was mentioned, I believe it was Carol potentially who mentioned it. And we've found a struggle with insurance. We were actually dropped by our insurance carrier when we were state inspected, we were okay. But as soon as we went USDA, there was only, I think, one provider in the state of Vermont that would cover us as a USDA facility. And the rates are pretty high because it is a big liability and risk for them.
Questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you both. We appreciate it. And,
Yeah, thank
we'll be looking for that, written, suggestion coming up.
Thank you
I'll
very
get
much.
that over there, thank you.
Hey, both.
Have a
Yeah.
good day.
Well,
So Bruce, you're the last guy.
Wow.
Bruce Hennessy from Maple Wind Farm, and yeah, please take the chair. Thank you very much for joining us this morning or considering this bill, and
Yeah,
how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. Where is the Maple Wind Farm?
We're in Richmond, Vermont.
Richmond, okay.
We just celebrated our 25th anniversary this past season. We're going into our 26th.
Yep.
And
That's great.
we do have, we're a diversified pasture-based livestock farm. And we do have a very small USDA processing facility, mostly for poultry. We do about between 15 and 20,000 broilers a year and about 600 turkeys of our own each year. And then we process somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,000 birds for other farms looking for inspected poultry, along with about another 1,500 turkeys around Thanksgiving time.
How many?
For other 1,500 for other farms. I did send this morning, a little bit late, but I sent kind of a copy of at least the bones of my testimony here. So you have it, and I would say that I'm very much in line with Jason and Amber. Look, we operated under exemption, the 1,000 bird limit for 12 years before we moved to this new model. And as Margaret said in her testimony, of course, we were really concerned. We wanted to be as clean and as sanitary as possible. When we went under inspection, we realized that we weren't even close. As diligent as we were, we didn't really understand the problems that can occur. There's just things you wouldn't even think of. They're counterintuitive. They're difficult to understand. And because you're working in it, you have a blind spot.
Just give us an example.
For instance, this is really minor, but
Yeah.
let's say you drop a knife.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, of course, you want to pick it up, rinse it off, right? Keep working. Yeah. Keep working. But that is an immediate adulteration of that product. Now, it seems very simple, but when you're in the middle of doing many birds, as these people are, you're gonna, you might give it a quick rinse off, maybe even put some soap on it. But there are so many other things that are happening there. Your hands are now completely contaminated. These are just little things that most of us wouldn't even think of that being under inspection allowed us to understand and really become a lot better. And so we went from very high bacterial counts in our birds when we first went under inspection. And you start sampling, saying, oh, wow, you know, we've got, our birds have over 1,000, you know, coliform forming units of E. coli. And we've worked really hard to bring that number down to next to zero through our processes. Now, I've been in front of this committee before complaining about the USDA and talking about the new Salmonella Performance Standard, all these things. So that's not a perfect system either, and a lot of it can be onerous and perhaps even unnecessary. But there's a tremendous amount of it, especially through the meat, the Vermont Meat Inspection Service, where they are helping us to figure out how to put out a truly sanitary and safe product. So again, I'm not advocating that everyone come under daily inspection for slaughter. That's not what I'm advocating. We were under the exemption and I thought that was a great program. And I'm not against people parting at that level, especially under 1,000. When you move to the 5,000 point, the only difference, as far as I could tell in the bill, is that they have to put clean clothing on. Unless I'm missing something. And I think at that point, once you go over 1,000 birds, that people should be writing and implementing a HACCP plan.
A what?
A HACCP plan, which is a hazard analysis critical control point plan. I'm not talking about being inspected underneath that plan, but being responsible, coming up with a plan of how they're going to make a safe product. How they're going to assure their customers and the public that that they're coming out with a safe and sanitary product. And I do believe that, you know, certainly at the 20,000 bird level, that should be the case. They are required to go under the sanitary SOPs for the federal 9 CFR sections that are relevant there. I think it has to go and should go further than that. And I have been in larger 20,000 bird plants. And I've seen that there are, because of the lack of inspection, there are unsanitary conditions that occur that the operator, as diligent and as full of integrity as they are, they just can't see it. They don't see it because they're so deep in it. And we're totally guilty of that the entire time. So, so my testimony is that I don't want, I am in favor of this bill with these conditions that at the 5,000 and 20,000 level that people have a HACCP plan, that it is monitored at least on a few occasions. They're keeping records of how they're proving that their process works. And that the state find a way to support that financially and help them do this. You know, we want to open this up and make it work for the entire community. We need to support farmers in really getting the education they need and some oversight, not daily oversight. It's not what I'm talking about, but some oversight, making sure that those blind spots that we all have are covered. So they can get feedback and be able to make changes and corrective actions that bring their product up to a really high standard. And that's really all I'm after. I mean, we went to inspection because we wanted to make this a business for ourselves and we wanted to be a service for other farms, and we are. And at that time, going to state and then USDA inspection was the only avenue to do that. Certainly, had we been able to do this under this bill, we may not have gone in that direction. And there are a fairly significant costs in being inspected for sure. But there are huge benefits, I think, to, you know, to food safety and to our community around clean, safe product.
So I just want to jump in a little bit.
Sure.
Are you the only facility, processing facility in the state?
No,
Okay,
no, sir, no.
so the smaller farms have choices.
Well, no. We are, I think, Jason and Amber offered this on a very small scale down in Putney.
Okay,
I believe that except for them, we're the only USDA facility
okay.
offering to outside producers. Now, there's 3 or 4 other folks that are just doing their own birds. Misty Knoll's a perfect example of that, right?
And how does that square with like New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York? Is the landscape different there?
It is, it's different in every state.
Okay.
You know, I know of quite a few exempt processors in Maine, for instance, that go up to 20,000 birds. Rhode Island, Taylor was talking about
Say exempt, 20,000.
exempt,
Okay.
yes, under exemption.
But those are hikes. I mean, that's,
Yes,
That's a big hike.
yeah.
yes, and this is, I don't, again, I'm not against this bill. I just think that we ought to put it in with support for better education and a little bit more oversight to just make sure that that people aren't doing what we did, which is we operated in a space in a way that we thought was really clean.
Right.
And we certainly educated ourselves and tried to do our best. And then coming under inspection, had a serious realization that we just weren't doing.
How expensive is it to get HACCP certified?
I think it's, of course, out of a university is about $750. In the past, the state has sponsored some, or
Okay.
maybe UVM extension.
Oh, that's interesting.
In the past, so like offering a course.
Yep.
But then making somebody on the farm, or having that be a requirement to go to that 5,000 level, I don't think is unreasonable, and it will open people's eyes to a really whole different level of food safety.
Yeah,
So what's the oversight that you talk, is that inspections?
So, again, I in the 1,000 bird level, I don't think the impact on public health has any, that's gonna be fairly insignificant. Once you move to 5,000, that's a lot of birds. And so I do think that the facility should be inspected, at least on an annual basis. And I do think that they should have a HACCP plan for that, or at that level, and moving up to 20,000.
And I just say to my colleagues here, have we heard from the agency that, because they've been fairly supportive of this, that they would be some increase in?
I don't know if we heard that specifically. Senator Campion asked earlier about the Department of Health concerns, and they said they didn't have any concerns. But ag, I think we need to have.
They do the inspections.
Yes.
And if they're supporting this, does that mean they're gonna increase the?
I think we need to get ag back in to tell us a little bit more. I mean,
I would be really surprised if the meat inspection service would, would be against taking a look at these farms that are going up over 1,000. To just see what their facility looks like and to make sure
It
that.
does all come down to resources.
Right, yeah, of course.
and the beauty of the bill.
But I think that I think that the state should support it.
Yeah.
With resources that ensures that people who are doing this are well educated. Now, the people that testified, Margaret Taylor, they they are educated and we know them and we trust them and all of those things. I can say, you know, for instance, that the facility that Taylor worked at in Rhode Island,
Mhm.
she mentioned, they're under a 20,000 bird exemption in that state. I know that facility, they're very good friends of ours. They had a HACCP plan, working with that many, 12 to 13, 15,000 birds, something like that, right? They've since moved to USDA. For a number of different reasons, but one of them was food safety.
Yeah.
So it's, again, I don't think this is a large barrier. I think it's an essential that this education piece and just taking a look and monitoring, you know, there's enough resources for them to come around to us at a farmer's market and make sure that our coolers are at the right temperature range. I think it would be more, I think spending a little bit on going and looking at these operations and making sure that they're keeping records and those kinds of things around sanitation and through their HACCP plan is something that the state should consider, should be part of this bill.
Linda's let me know, we do have the ag agency coming in next week to testify in the bill again, so that's helpful. You seem, Bruce, to be putting and there's 3 tiers that we're talking about,
Yes.
right? 1,000, 2,000, or 5,000, and then 20. And you seem to be indicating that at the lowest level, maybe not as much oversight
Right.
is necessary, but the next level up. I'm just wondering, and I'm trying to remember what everybody said this morning. It seemed like 5,000 covered about all of the
Yeah.
people that we talked to. I don't know who does 20,000 in Vermont. Maybe there's some, but I don't know who they are.
I don't know anybody who's operating at that level.
Okay.
Without inspection. And the reason that I say below the 1,000, that's really very much of a side business. If you're there and it's a very small amount, and you're only probably processing just a few times a year.
Yeah.
And that it makes sense to me to have less oversight on that, the impact to the total health of our community is not going to be nearly as large if there's a mistake there.
Of course, when you talk about resources, we're in a situation this year where we're literally looking in the couches for the quarters and the
Right.
dimes and the nickels. There isn't a lot of money. I don't, whether it fits into the current ag budget or not to help with the $750 that would cost to get certified or not.
I think you could do it for less.
Yeah.
I think there's somebody at UVM could probably actually teach it, or if not, they'd be able to bring and then offer a course which would probably be, I would imagine you could do it for less than half of that per person.
Okay, so, yeah,
And then if you require the farms to pay a little bit of that, we might be able to get there. I don't think it's a lot of money to make sure that people are educated.
Well, one mistake would,
Exactly. Yeah. And I also don't think it's tremendous amount of additional resources needed to take a look at someone's record for half a day. You might find 20 or 30 farms that are doing this, and that's not a whole lot. And again, for us, you know, I'm a former board member of rural Vermont. I completely understand the barriers that stand in the way of small farms. We're still small farm, we sound big, but we're not, we're still very small. And I get it. And I am in favor of this bill with the conditions in it.
yeah, and I think this committee always tries to thread the needle a bit. You know, we don't want to be overly burdensome to anybody in terms of the agricultural community. And yet, as Senator Weston points out, if you make 1 or 2 bad decisions and mistakes, it can affect everybody else. So we're always trying to sort of find that balance between getting involved with people's lives and letting them go.
And I know that there's no one out there, at least that I've ever met as a farmer, who would ever purposely do so.
Of course,
Not
Right. And it's really just a matter of having somebody who doesn't have any real skin in the game come in and just take a look. To see, to open up those blind spots. We do that in all aspects of our business just because we know they're there, but we can't see them. You know? So,
Well, just what you just brought up, somebody drops a knife and go pick it up. I totally get somebody washing the knife, but do they think about washing their hands?
You know, I mean, like, in our plant, when we're training, we see people do it all the time.
Yeah.
They'll drop some, or they'll take a barrel that's full of offal. And they'll move it over where it's full, so it has to move out of the way and pull in a new one. Their apron, their gloves, everything about them is now contaminated, and you're gonna put that on the bird.
Yeah.
And I'm not, again, no one's doing this on purpose, but even folks like us, where we're under inspection, constantly under inspection, we make those mistakes every day. And we're called on it, people are there to notice that that's happening, right?
well, of course, we have the bill from the other chamber and, if we monkey with it, it'll have to go back across, which is
Yeah.
okay too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I don't want to, like I said, I am in favor. Just-
Yeah.
I think we gotta be.
Right. I'd be very interested to see what the ag agency does
Yeah.
next week. Whether it's something we can add to it without making it impossible to pass.
Right.
Because I think, we heard some pretty compelling testimony this morning from folks that make a living at this, and it would help them greatly. And the concern that we heard from the larger folks earlier in the week, for the most part, was about the hygienic situation, and if we can address that to some degree, it still might be able to get added to the bill before it gets to the goal line. Anything else for?
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming down from Richmond.
Thank you, bet. I'm close enough that I can actually make it here in
Yeah.
a reasonable amount of time.
So again, for Richie's benefit, next week, we will be taking a look again on multiple days with respect to H81, the right to repair. Chris Pearson will be coming in to testify on that, among other folks. And I think we have a couple of days planned to do that, and then at least one more on H603, which is slaughter exemption. And then those are the only two bills I think that remain. Although there is a miscellaneous ag bill, I guess, coming from the other body too. So, well, take a look at. So unless anybody